finally being introduced to Christy Love. If there's anything extra in your introduction, let me know. If you need, if you want to. We have now reached the point where the teams that are still alive, and there's only a few of them, will get a chance to decide what things they need to do to keep playing, keep alive in the tournament. And like any other tournament, whether it be a gladiatorial tournament or, in this case, American tackle football, there's going to be key moments, key performances, and key individuals that will decide which of these teams get to keep playing. I am joined here on Team ABS Media by Keith Richards, not the one who dresses like a drug-addicted pirate, but the one who brings us great analysis of both football, and also the one and only Christy Love. And for those of you who are from my generation, you may have images of the great 70s TV show Get Christy Love, but we've gotten Christy Love, and she's here to also bring the heat when it comes, once again, to football. And we'll be discussing, of course, particularly this wild card weekend, two teams that are very, 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 very familiar with each other and very, very, very ready for this game because they have a lot of similarities. I'll start with you, Christy, because ladies first, ladies first. If you will do me the great favor of telling me in the first matchup, which team do you think needs to strike first and why? Needs to get the first big play and why?
I would say the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers have always been playing from behind the ball. They never score first. So I feel like if they can get things going offensively early on, they may have a better chance of winning against the Baltimore Ravens. George Pickens, last game, he had a very bad game. He only had one catch. He had 3 drop passes, and he needs to step up big. So if him and Russ can get things going early and slow down. And the Baltimore Ravens defense can allow them to get things going. I feel like the Pittsburgh Steelers have a chance to win.
Yep. Okay. Same question for you, Keith. Who needs to strike first in the first of these wild card matchups and why?
Steelers, absolutely. They're just not a team that's built to play from behind, especially against good teams. I mean, if they find themselves down 14 points early to this Steelers team, they're not going to win. It's just that plain and simple. They like to run. Their running game has been spotty. Their running game has been producing a lot of explosive runs. Their big guy on explosive plays is George Pickens, and like Christy said, he didn't have a great game last game. I mean, Russ has been, I would say Russ. I think people expect the Russ of early Seattle days when he's running around making plays, and he's just too old for that. He's not going to do that anymore. But if you give him a good running game, let him pick his spots on where he can throw deep balls and protect the lead, I think he can play really well. When you're trying to play Russ, who needs to make decisions on trying to make big plays, that's where you get into trouble with Russ and get the turnovers. So absolutely, the Steelers need to score first.
Okay. And then we're going to switch over to, of course, the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, in the 2 wild card matchups that open up, people love offense. They talk about offense. Offensive players get usually all the best commercials and all the best endorsements and the prettiest fiancés and all that kind of stuff. However, we were probably all in pull-ups, except for me, because pull-ups didn't exist when I was a toddler. But the rest of you were probably in pull-ups the first time you heard someone say defense wins championships. So let's jump over to the defense. What defense do you think has the best chance to turn the game in the favor of their team, and why?
I'm first.
Yes, once again,
okay.
ladies.
Okay. I feel like the Ravens has a good defense. Roquan Smith, the last time these two teams met against each other, Roquan Smith stopped the Pittsburgh Steelers running back Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. They didn't allow them to get over 50 rushing yards. So I feel like the Ravens defense can help them heavily win this game today.
Okay. Well, we're going to see at least one or two big plays that come from an unexpected source, right? I'm gonna jump over to ask the same question to you, Keith Richards. Same question. Tell me about a defensive thing, whether it be philosophy or a player that you think tilts it for one of these two teams.
Well, there's some really good defenses in these early games.
Yep.
I don't think either one of these defenses allowed over 21 points a game, which is tough to do in today's NFL. I think if I had to pick one player that could turn the favor, I am probably going to go out of the box and say Khalil Mack with the Chargers, mainly because CJ Stroud isn't what you would call a running quarterback. He escapes the pocket to try to find more plays downfield, and that's where Khalil Mack comes in with his athleticism. To when CJ Stroud is trying to escape the pocket to trying to find open receivers, make a play, Khalil Mack has that ability to not give him that time to do that. If he can keep him away from just standing there dancing around for a few extra seconds to be able to find some extra receivers, what she's going to need with Tank Dell being out. If they can eliminate that, that really hurts CJ Stroud. Make him rush when he's out of the pocket instead of being able to escape the pocket to find a few extra seconds.
These are similar teams in terms of defense until you get to one really important thing. So the Chargers are 11th in yards allowed per game on defense at 324.4, and the Texans are slightly better, number 6 at 316.8. And third down, they're both good, right? Fifth, the Chargers at 35.7, and then 36.97 for the Texans. Here's the big difference: red zone defense, right? The Chargers are number 1, the best. They're numero uno, 45%, right? Number 27 is where Houston checks in. They are allowing touchdowns 63.54% of the time the teams get into the red zone. And say what you want about Greg Roman, and lots of people, you know who you are, demonized Greg Roman at various points in his coaching career, called him everything but a child of God. However, every place he's been as an offensive coordinator, they have been good in the red zone. He has always been a good red zone coordinator, partially because they're so good in the run game. If you have a really good run game, you're going to be good in the red zone. So I wonder if the Texans defense will be able to resist the Chargers if they do get into the red zone.
I don't think so. Because you have I wouldn't say a great running game, a serviceable running game with the Chargers, especially with J.K. Dobbins being back. The wild card for the Chargers, as it has been all season, is Ladd McConkey. He is that new receiver that no one expected to be there, but he runs seriously good routes, especially if you're going to try to run zone coverage. He just eats teams up in routes, whether it be long distance routes, short routes in a red zone. He's going to find a way to get open. So you're trying to account for a Ladd, you're trying to account for a serviceable running game, and you're already bad in the red zone anyway. That's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. I mean, we all have those jokes, you know, in the draft community about calling him the Jordy Nelson of Danny Amendolas, but he's a actually really good athlete. I got a chance to see him up close in person at the Senior Bowl. He is an explosive athlete. And you add to that, he is an extremely refined route runner, was in college and, you know, has continued to improve. He's going to be problems. To me, the X factor is Quentin Johnston and their mystery backs of tight ends. Now, you can sort of shake up the mystery box of tight ends, and someday, you know, it's Will Dissly's day, and someday it's Stone Spart's day, and, you know, one of those guys will go off and suddenly have, you know, 55 yards and a touchdown. Who knows which one it is? But if Quentin Johnston, who made a hands catch, right, in their last game, made a beautiful hands catch. I'm partially doing this because I was a Quentin Johnston guy, and I got beat up pretty good by some of my friends in the draft community for being a Quentin Johnston guy. But I never say he was a number one. I say he's a really good number two.
Yeah.
And if he gets a chance to keep developing, he becomes confident in his hands. That's a big, fast human being. He's going to create problems because now you've got that guy giving you the devil's own time underneath, right, on those pivot routes and whip routes and, you know, digs. And then if you've got a guy running those posts and goes on top of that, and the pound you in the ribs running game that Greg Roman loves, they're one of those teams that could get hot, right, and go deeper than most people think, in my opinion. So I'm intrigued. I'm interested and intrigued by that particular matchup. I think we kind of know what we're going to get. No offense to, you know, the Steelers and Ravens, but I feel like I could pull up a Steelers and Ravens game from any time in the past 4 or 5 years, and it's going to look like that game. I feel like these teams know each other so
they do
so well. They think football similarly. We want to keep the game tight. Now, here's the difference, obviously, is talent, right? There's nobody as talented as Lamar Jackson suiting up, at least on offense, suiting up in the black and gold. There isn't. And I say this as a Steelers fan. We have no one that talented. And then our running game, they used a very nice term, serviceable. That's what our running game is. Najee Harris is a plotter. He's almost as big as Derrick Henry, but he's slower. Despite being younger, he's a slower player. When a guy is a healthy scratch from running the 40 at both the combine and his pro day, no injury, just decided I'm not doing this, that's everything you want to know about his speed. When a guy says, nope, just don't feel like it, that's how you know he's not fast. And then Jaylen Warren is a terrific change of pace back. But he's our most explosive back. We don't have an explosive first option. Najee is a run into you running back, or occasionally he can pick and put a move on somebody, but he's not going to go the distance unless the distance is a short distance. He's a 18 yards if you block it up kind of on 80 yards if you block it up right kind of guy. So the Steelers need to make this a death by 1,000 cuts game, which is how the Steelers play football. It's always death by 1,000 cuts. So I'm going to jump back to coaching. Because of the extra time for preparation that you have going into playoff games, or you have some extra time usually for preparation, and the fact that you've now had a whole season worth of tape, right? As opposed to early in the season, right, where you're sort of guessing at what teams might want to accomplish. Now, I'm going to go back to, once again, Christy. Which coaching staff do you think has to be the most innovative and creative to give their team a chance to win one of these playoff games, first wildcard weekend?
I would probably say the Pittsburgh Steelers, because one, they're the underdogs, in my opinion, going into this game. They have been playing offensively, they've been playing bad, especially the last 4 games. They just rust and they haven't been getting anything going. They haven't scored more than like 17 points in the last couple of games. So I feel like they need to do everything in their power, trick plays. The coaching got to figure out, let's do everything, like unload the clip and figure out a way to get this win. I know it's been rumored around that Tomlin might utilize Justin Fields with Russ. Rush is good for throwing the ball deep down the field, and Fields can run with his legs. So, like I said, unload the clip and figure out what works to go ahead and get this win, because it's win or go home at this point. There's no more time for errors, nothing.
Same question to you. Keith, which coaching staff do you think has to do the most cooking in the kitchen, and what do they have to do to give their team a chance?
I hate to sound like a broken record, but I got to say the Steelers as well.
Mhm.
I mean, when it boils down to it, especially when you get down to the playoffs, you definitely want to have good X's and O's, but the teams that have the best playmakers are the teams that wins. The Chargers, you have J.K. Dobbins, McConkey, Herbert. You got C.J. Stroud. Joe Mixon can make you some plays. Lamar Jackson's really all you need with the Ravens, but they got 5 other players that can make plays. The Steelers don't have a lot of playmakers that can just go out there and make a play willy-nilly like the other 3 teams do. Because of that, then you have to scheme good plays, especially when it comes to getting the ball to Pickens. And I say that knowing that Pickens has a ridiculous catch radius and can make some difficult catches. But if they're expecting that, they're going to scheme towards that. They're going to put more people towards Pickens, and they're not going to make that play available. So then you have to scheme other ways to get the attention off of Pickens, whether that be screen passes with Warren. You get some good zone read run plays with Najee Harris. You get some of those tight ends open in the middle of the field. Whatever you can do to get as many effective passes thrown towards Pickens as you can. And they're just not built to just do that by themselves. So they're going to need the coaching to make that happen.
Yeah, I think Mike Williams and Calvin Austin are really sort of almost undiscovered to some extent. Calvin Austin has been hurt a lot. He's been underutilized. He's a smaller bodied receiver, which is a tougher receiver for a shorter quarterback to see. Also, it's another thing that people talk about. Williams is a big-bodied guy who, once again, former Charger, who, when healthy, another guy who's had some injury concerns, but when healthy, was able to give you that jump ball receiver. And the thing that Russ does best, of course, is that moon ball, right? That's a guy who could make a big impact on this game as Mike Williams. And then even if you throw the ball underneath to Calvin Austin, if it's just a basic cross or a curl even, and he makes somebody miss because of his ability to accelerate, which most of these guys don't, even the faster people, like Pickens is fast, but he's not a stop-start guy. He's a he's a guy who can run past you, but he's not gonna right. Calvin Austin is the one guy. Jaylen Warren has some good quickness too, but that's the one guy we've talked about who has the ability to start close to the line of scrimmage, grab a ball, make 2 people miss, right? A guy who has punt and kickoff return background, and now 88 out the gate after he makes a couple of miss. Get one block, and that 6-yard pass can turn into a 60-yard touchdown. I hope that they are realizing what they have in Mike Williams, Calvin Austin, and then if they are able to be effective at those players and plays to them, that might open up some things in both the run game and, of course, trying to get the ball to Pickens. And then you mentioned Freiermuth as well. While he's not the most dynamic player in the world, he's extremely reliable, and Russ loves tight ends. I'm going to move back or forward, I guess that's how you want to think of it, to obviously we talked a little bit about the Texans and the Chargers. That, to me, is another fascinating coaching matchup. We have a older coaching staff, right, with a very established coach who's coached at a high level at multiple levels of football. And then obviously on the other side, we have a person who I have very sharp, clear memories of his college career. I mean, I remember Harbaugh's college career too because I'm old. But I have very sharp, clear memories of, DeMeco Ryans as a 18-year-old. I mean, it's very, very much a feel-old moment for me seeing these guys coaching. Let's talk the coaching matchup in that game as well. And I'll start once again with Christy. What are the key coaching nuggets that you see in that game?
I would say with the Houston Texans, I feel like, in my opinion, they're still trying to figure out how to move along since Tank got hurt. They've been struggling. CJ Stroud been struggling pretty much all season, in my opinion. So they need to. So they're still trying to figure out how to move forward. And Nico Collins, that's pretty much their go-to guy for everybody. So Houston, so they need to go ahead and utilize him to his potential, his max potential. That's pretty much it for Houston. They need to go ahead and just utilize him because he leads He's the team's most targeted player. He got the most target percentage. He get the most yards. He's a great route runner, X, Y, and Z. So utilize him. That's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, my scouting reports on him back in his days at college said this guy has Mike Evans type potential, and he could. I mean, he could have a Mike Evans type career if he stays healthy and stays in a good offense. Same question to you, Keith. Coaching wise, matchup wise, who has to do what in terms of those two coaching staffs, the Chargers and Texans? One, to execute the plan that they have, and to also negate what the other team's trying to accomplish.
So you got to kind of, like you alluded to, you have a youth versus wisdom coaching matchup. Like you said, Jim or not Jim? Is it Jim? I get the two Harbaughs.
It is Jim.
Jim, yes. Jim has done it on many different levels, and as they've shown in graphics multiple times this season, he's come into a team that was not good and then raises them like almost immediately. Like he's done that at every stop. He did it with the Niners, did it with Michigan. He's doing it with the Chargers. And he's the coach who's been here before. Like he understood, not that the Texans didn't make the playoffs last season, but Harbaugh has a lot more experience in these positions, especially when you throw in the fact that Tank Dell is not there, who was the most explosive player on the Texans offense. Jim Harbaugh absolutely knows that. He knows the struggles that CJ Stroud has had. He knows that they are still trying to find a way to replace that explosiveness that Tank Dell had. And that's when it falls on D'Amico Ryans. Just because Tank Dell is not there, they still have good players. Nico Collins is good. Joe Mixon started the season really well and it's kind of fallen off the face of the earth. So Jim is going to do everything he can to put as much pressure on CJ Stroud. So it's going to be on D'Amico Ryans to take as less pressure off of CJ Stroud as he can. And that, I think the key is going to be to get Joe Mixon going again. Because if you're dependent on CJ Stroud to consistently make really good throws, he hasn't done that all season. He's done it in spots, but he hasn't done it consistently all season. So the goal is going to be to get pressure off of CJ Stroud through the running game and Joe Mixon to be able to open up the field to give CJ Stroud more easy throws, because Jim Harbaugh is not going to make it easy for them at all. That was one of the best defenses in the NFL. They only allow, I think it was 17 points a game. And yeah, the Texans can score more than 17 points. Will they in this high pressure situation? That's going to be on them.
Yeah. Here's the thing that jumps out at me, and I won't go too deep into it, sort of X and O's wise, but if you just play cover two, you rotate, that safety over the top of Collins pretty much all the time. Even when Collins gets the ball, he's going to have to get it with, corner sinking underneath him and safety over the top of him. So he's not going to be able to, even when he gets it, he's not getting far in terms of after the catch, because there's somebody underneath taking away, you can't go back shoulder as an underneath defender, and there's somebody over the top. So you're going to keep him on lid on him, and then dare somebody else in the passing game to beat you, and then tell your strong safety to basically cheat forward, right? A little bit, even though it's cover two, you kind of cheat forward towards the line of scrimmage so you can take away the run game or come down hard on the tight end catching the ball underneath. And now you're saying, okay, I'm going to take away Mixon because I'm cheating forward my strong safety a little bit. I'm having my free safety take away anything deep to Nico Collins. Now what? Now what are you going to do? And so, hey, Dalton Schultz better have the game of his life, or somebody else better really break out. And they do have some talent. They do have a good scheme. I like the scheme. So CJ Stroud has pressed this year.
Yes.
Right? People use terms like sophomore slump. He had a record-setting rookie year. And you think he didn't know that? You think he didn't hear that? You think his agent wasn't in his ear about, hey, you do this again next year, we bring them to the table and tell them to tear up your rookie deal early? You think he didn't have all that on his mind coming into this season? He was going to rewrite the record list, go over 5,000 yards, throw for 50 touchdowns, and all this good stuff. You think he didn't have that in his mind? You don't think he did that? He's going to be the new guy. I'm going to be the one to put my arm around the all-state guy, right? I'm going to be the right. That's I'm going to win the Super Bowl, right? All that was on his mind coming into the season.
Yep.
And hey, Dan,
what's happening? How's everybody?
Oh, we're don't worry, Dan. I'm going to back it up, and you're going to get like 5 rapid fire questions as soon as we're done with this.
Oh wow!
Stuff you missed. Yeah. You're welcome. So the to me, the Texans offensive line has not done me any favors, but Stroud has also not helped the offensive line because what you can create bad situations for your offensive line by not trusting things, right? By deciding, oh, maybe I can get a bigger play. I'm not going to take this 6-yard cross. I'm going to see if I can maybe hit that dig over the top by holding the ball a little bit longer. No. Take it. You don't go broke picking up change. So I think that's one of the keys, in fact. Just take it. Is it 4 yards? 4 yards 3 times is 12 yards. First down. Take it. Okay, so Dan, you're playing catch up here. So I'm going to ask you to give us a player other than the players everyone's already talking about in each of these wildcard games that you think emerges. A player that, everyone's talked about the quarterbacks and even some of the wide receivers. Sometimes in the case of Pittsburgh, you talk about TJ Watt because we don't really have an offense. So give us a player that you don't think people are talking about enough in each one of these wild card matchups you think will help turn the game.
Wow, that's a good question. That's an excellent question. Talking about these games today, you're talking about Philadelphia. I mean, not Philadelphia, but Pittsburgh.
Yep.
And when I think about Pittsburgh, the name that comes to mind is always, of course, TJ Watt, right? And as you said, but somebody that's kind of like off the radar that might pop up, you might say. Man, that's a good question. I'm probably gonna have to go with I'm gonna have to go with the running back. I think I'm gonna have to go with the running back. I think a lot of times he gets Najee Harris, you might say, and a lot of times people overlook him, and he's not what people want or they consider to be the top kind of talented running back in the with that team. And I understand it, but every now and then, sometimes somebody pops up, and I think it's a prime situation for him to do so. They've been struggling very, very badly with the pass game. So I wouldn't be surprised if they came in and had an offensive game plan of heavily leaning upon the run and trying to get some things going with the run in the run game. So it could potentially be a decent game for him if he focuses and does what his job is supposed to be. So I think that might be one guy that I would say for Pittsburgh. I'm not really high on what they're doing right now, though, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well,
what are they doing right now?
Losing. A bunch of losing right now.
Because I've watched a lot of Steelers games these last weeks, and I can't understand what they're trying to do right now.
No.
Yeah, well, Arthur Smith, this is really a referendum on Arthur Smith, right? There was a lot of criticism of Arthur Smith. People said, I want to FedEx this guy back to Tennessee, right? When he was with Atlanta, right? That was one of the jokes about Arthur Smith when he was there. People blamed him for Kyle Pitts' struggles. Well, he's gone, people. Kyle Pitts still isn't setting the world on fire. So maybe that part wasn't just Arthur Smith. Speaking for all the various people in fantasy world who still holding on to hope that one day Kyle Pitts will put it all together. But the fact is that Arthur Smith is one of those people. There's a term quixotic, right? And the root of that is Quixote, right? Don Quixote, right? Tilting at windmills. And it seems like he almost intentionally decides to raise his own level of difficulty, right? Instead of saying, I'm going to do the simplest thing here, it's like, well, they won't see me running the tight end in this situation. Like there's things that he does where it feels like it's like the iocane poisoning scene in Princess Bride. Well, if you know that I know that I know that you know that I want to run the football, then I can't run the football. Therefore, sometimes you just do the simplest thing.
Absolutely.
I think if Arthur Smith says, who are my best players? I'm going to design plays for my best players. And if I get beat using my best players, I live with it. As opposed to the whole, well, if you know that I know that I know that you know that I want to run the football, that I can't run the football. And then when you do throw the football, go ahead and swing your sword, right? I think you're going to need big plays. Both defenses are very good. You can't just say we're going to have a 14-play drive getting 3.9 yards a carry with Najee. And Najee's a tough back, and he's catches the ball fairly well. He's good in blitz pickup, but he's not a guy who's going to give you a big play. He's not going to go for 80 yards. It's just not something he's capable of doing. If you block it up right, he might go for 18 yards, right?
Yeah.
But if you hammer him in there in certain spots, get the defense hopefully to kind of cheat up towards the line of scrimmage, now you can hit some things behind the linebackers, do a little bit of business, and then every once in a while, when you get the right call, the right situation, the right look, you throw some. The screen game has not been used in my mind enough. Jaylen Warren is a terrific receiver of screens. He's a good screen back. He sees the field well. Once again, a guy with punt returner background. I would like to see him and Calvin Austin, those guys with return ability, those guys who can make people miss in the open field. Let's do some middle screens. Let's do some jailbreak screens. Let's get them in open spaces. You're only going to get a few chances at big plays. This is a really good defense you're facing. And while Zach Orr is a younger coordinator, and once again, another feel-old moment for me, I remember Zach Orr as a high schooler coming into college at high school. He's now one of the young, bright defensive coordinators, but there's some opportunities as he's figuring out how to be a defensive coordinator, maybe take advantage of his aggressiveness. I'm going to come back to you, Christy. So each of these games is going to have a critical moment, a team that goes for it on fourth down, or a punt, or a big play that people don't see coming in special teams, or a tip ball interception, or a strip sack. Give me the name of a player we haven't named so far that you think can make one of those key plays could be offense, defense, or special teams in each one of these playoff matchups we're going to see on this first wildcard weekend.
Oh, a player that is going to make a big play.
Yeah, that we haven't talked about yet. Yes, correct.
That's honestly a good question. Let me come back to you on that one.
All right, then. I will come back to you. Keith Richards, same question for you. Especially special teams. I think that especially in a game like, once again, that's John Harbaugh, not Jim. John Harbaugh's background, right? He was Andy Reid's special teams coach back in Philadelphia. He's a guy that comes from a special teams background. I wonder if he might try to cook something up, or, of course, Danny Smith, right, the king of the gumshoers, one of the great special teams coaches in the history of the NFL. I mean, if there was ever going to be a person who might make the Hall of Fame, he and Dave Toub, of course, in Kansas City, and Danny Smith in Pittsburgh, are guys who I would consider potentially Hall of Fame special teams coaches. I'm not throwing curveballs. This is heat, baby. Throwing heat. This is how games are won, right? Offense, defense, and special teams. It's three-phase game. Everybody knows that.
Absolutely.
Heat. That's heat. Okay, so Keith, give me somebody we haven't mentioned yet who makes a big play. It could be offense, defense, or special teams that you think turns the tide of battle in one of these games.
All right, I'm gonna throw a curveball your way. Actually, I'm gonna go defense in one game, special teams in the other game, and there won't be positive impacts. I'm gonna start with the Chargers and defense, and I think Darwin James does something really stupid that could end up causing the Chargers in a variety of an unnecessary roughness penalty. He has been pretty on the chain as far as Darwin James goes this season. But he likes to play a very physical brand of football, which I don't fault him for. But he sometimes doesn't think when he's trying to play a physical brand of football. And he has a tendency to, at big moments in the game, wanting to maybe create a turnover or rile the crowd up or rile his team up, go for a big hit. And maybe it's the difference between getting the Texans off the field and sealing the game away and extending the game with a 15-yard penalty, and that gives the Chargers a chance to go down and kick a game-winning field goal. I'm not saying that will happen. I think it's a good possibility, though, knowing the player that he is. Special teams, Steelers and Ravens. I do think the Ravens win this game, but these games are often super tight, as we said, that come down to a field goal. Know who hasn't been great kicking field goals all season?
But those days,
It's not Chris Boswell. And I think if you were to put your money on it, you would still say that the Ravens kicker, I'm not trying to jinx him, I'm just going to say the Ravens kicker, is going to make a big kick for you. But there's been several games where he's left 6 points on the field, 7 points, 8 points between missed field goals, missed extra points. And when you have the opposite in Chris Boswell, who has not done that very often, that becomes a big factor and a big worry for the Ravens. They'll never come out and say they're worried about it, but let's be honest, it's bit them at least 2 times this season already. So I think there is a potential, if it is a really close game, it's a high-pressure situation, that he could miss one. I'm just saying, it may not happen, but it's just something to keep an eye on.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Justin Tucker's a future Hall of Famer, but this has been his worst.
I'm trying not to jinx him. I'm not
trying to jinx him either. I say he's a future Hall of Famer, but this has been his, even going back to his rookie year, this has been his most difficult season. He is a guy who is going to be in 2 Halls of Fame. He's going to be in the College and Pro Football Hall of Fame. I am a big fan of his, even though I may not be a fan of the Ravens. I'm a big fan of his, but this has been a rough season. And Chris Boswell has played at an all-pro level. I think you picked a very, very good one. And Derwin James plays that star role, right? So he's a guy who sort of plays that hybrid position, a little bit of linebacker, a little bit of nickel corner, a little bit of safety, all mixed up in one. It's one of those positions that exist now because teams' base is nickel nowadays, right? I remember I played a little bit of nickelback back when nickelbacks were busters, right? Because you didn't need them that often back in the old days. I played a lot of power I and wing T teams back in the old days because I'm old. And so being a nickelback, shout out to me and Tony Dungy, old school nickelback. Yeah, that's the position Dungy. And as a rookie, he led the NFL in interceptions, right? Former quarterback at Minnesota. But yes, we were busters, right? Back nickelbacks used to be busters. Now they're not. Now they're incredibly important players. Now they are starters in essence. And your third linebacker is really more of a reserve. But same question for you, Dan Goodwin. Give me a player that we haven't talked about, could be offense, defense, or special teams, who makes a game-changing, and as Mr. Keith Richards pointed out, could be negative change. Doesn't have to be positive, but a game-changing play that either keeps the other team in the game or maybe keeps his team in the game.
Low key, I wanted to go back to Christy so that we could put more pressure on her to provide an answer to this question.
Okay, fine. I'll answer.
I'll go ahead.
You want to go? Want me to go?
It's up to the host. It's up to the host.
Oh, okay.
I will save Christy just for the last because now the anticipation's building. People are really going to be excited to hear what she has to say now.
Oh, gotcha.
So take it away, Dan.
Well, one thing that I said, of course, the running game for Pittsburgh would stand out for me a little bit. Hopefully, they can do some things. But I'm going to go to the other side of the other team in this matchup, right? I'm talking about the Ravens. And when I look at the Ravens, I'm like, okay, we know what they're going to do. We know they're going to run the ball. We know Lamar's going to do his thing, hopefully. Sometimes in playoff games, he struggles a little bit. We understand that. There's nothing wrong with saying that is the obvious thing, right? That's the elephant in the room. How is he going to perform? I think he's going to go to what he knows best. And what I mean by that is Mark Andrews. I think Mark Andrews is not going to have one play that particularly stands out, but he'll have several plays because I think this is going to be a big game for him. I think Lamar Jackson is going to go to his bread and butter as basically the guy that's been there with him for the longest, somebody that he can depend on in a playoff situation, a playoff feel and atmosphere, and I think he's going to rely heavily on him. I say he has 8 to 10 catches for 90 to 100 yards and maybe a touchdown or two. That's what I say for Mark Andrews. In the other game, I'm going to go to the other side. I think on, when you look at this team with the Chargers and whatnot, I think one of the guys that's going to stand out for me. I'm going to go to defensive line, and I'm going to go the defensive lineman. Not Bosa, but somebody from the defensive tackle spot is going to have a nice play. and cause a turnover, a strip sack, some type of fumble that will end up causing some things to happen for the opposition there. So I'm going to go on defensive line. I'm not sure who I had to really give some thought to that, but I'm going to go defensive line to make a play in that Chargers game.
All right. Yeah, well, Khalil Mack was mentioned earlier by Keith. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, everyone's been waiting for the answer to this to come from the one, the only Christy Love. So everyone, please grab your pens, your papers, take careful notes. We are about to hear pearls of wisdom from Miss Christy Love. Same question, Christy.
Pearls is the window. That's crazy. Pearls is crazy. Okay, I would say for the Ravens, I have to say the secondary. I feel like the secondary, Kyle Hamilton is going to he should make a big hit to cough the ball up and go ahead and get a touchdown. That's what I think. And then I said his name before, but I'm going to say it again because it can be a sneak play for the Steelers. Justin Fields. Somehow, Russ has been struggling. Tomlin saying he could put in Justin Fields. Justin Fields comes in at some point of the game and runs in for a touchdown.
Okay.
It's happened before this season. It can happen again.
I don't hate that. I'm going to throw in a couple of people that I think will be very important, particularly for the Steelers. I believe that Mason McCormick, their talented rookie, is going to be targeted by the Ravens. And if he holds up, because interior pass rush, particularly for a shorter quarterback, is even more devastating than exterior pass rush. He can move around, he can step around, he can create throwing lanes when players are coming off the edge, when players are running the hoop. But if somebody's just pushing the pocket in your face and you're 5'10" and 5'8", and I'm a short king myself, trust me, I get it. It is a struggle. And so I think if he holds up, right, that if Zach Frazier and he hold up and Isaac Seumalo hold up for that guard center guard cup, and then the other one they're going to target is Dan Moore Jr. There is no more divisive name in Steelers world than Dan Moore Jr. There's people who love him, there's people who hate him, there's people who desperately want to move him to a different position or a different team or whatever. But if Dan Moore Jr. has the game of his life and protects Russ's blind side, that I believe is what will keep the Steelers in this game. And like I said, that interior cup of Seumalo, yes, I agree with that. Justin Herbert gets 30 or more yards, book it. The Los Angeles Chargers win if Herbert rushes for 30 more yards. Book that.
How's that ankle though? He's been hurt pretty much for the whole season. I think that's why he hasn't been running.
Ridiculously tough, right? I saw him play through injury going back to his time. I've watched him once again because I'm old. I've watched his entire career. At Oregon, he played for two very different offenses in Oregon, right? A pro style offense and then a spread offense. And he was good in both of them. That's all I knew he was going to be so good. When I see a guy master two different systems, like Russ did, right? Russ ran a very different system, almost pure West Coast offense under Tom O'Brien at NC State. And then those of Wisconsin, that, power sort of, 1970s offense that they like to run, but he ran both of them at a super high level. That when a guy in college can master two different offensive systems and run them both well, that player almost always does well at the next level. Yes, yeah. Dan.
I'm gonna change something, and I want to point this out because I believe he doesn't get enough credit that he deserves, and this is going to the and he doesn't get as much credit because they haven't been passing the ball as much as they normally do, right? I'm not talking about Justin Herbert, but I think Quentin Johnson has a possibility of having a good game. I think he could have 50 plus yards. That's going to be and you say, oh, that's a little bit, but for him, that's going to be a really good game. First kind of playoff game situation feel for him. I think he'll have a nice game as well. So I'm going to change my pick from that defensive line to Quentin Johnston. I think he doesn't get enough credit. I think he's better than what people think he is. And you'll see starting next year, you'll see him take off in an upward trajectory, in my opinion.
He had a lot of drops early in his career. I'm a Quentin Johnston guy, but I can admit it got in his head at one point. You could see him doubting his own hands. And then, like I said, he made a couple of big hands catches recently, last couple of weeks, especially last week. He made some he made a really, I mean, that was a high level difficulty catch, and he had to make it with his hands. He couldn't use his body. He became becoming a body catcher at one point, and of course, we all know why that eventually comes back to bite.
That's not good.
No, it's very, very bad. There's a long list of big, fast human beings who washed out at wide receiver because, I'm looking at you, Tyrone Calico, who washed out at wide receiver because they didn't trust their hands. So his ability to come to trust his hands means that also the quarterback can come to trust his hands. And now this big, fast person isn't just a decoy anymore. Now he's an important part of your offense. So I'm going to agree with that because partially it makes me feel better as a Quentin Johnston guy to hear somebody else mention Quentin Johnston, but also because they don't have another guy quite like him. Mike Williams is now playing for Pittsburgh.
Right.
So he is the next best chance to become that guy, that down the field and red zone, big bodied guy who can go up and snag the ball. And frankly, there are no 6'4" or very few 6'4" defensive backs, right? So if you are a guy who's 6'3" and up and can jump, you're never really covered, right? You might be covered on this plane, but once you go vertical, you're open.
Wide open.
You're open again. So that I think could be. You said 50. I think he gets at least 58 yards. I think 58 yards is sort of the break point. If he gets over that, 30 yards rushing from Herbert, 58 yards from Quentin Johnston to me equals victory for the Los Angeles Chargers. I've been practicing Los Angeles Chargers because once again I'm old. I spent my whole life saying San Diego Chargers, so I've been fighting that one. So now I'm going to come back to sort of this is sort of coaching, but sort of coaching in a different sort of way. Somebody's going to get hurt. People get hurt. It's football. And at that point, somebody's going to have to step up. I'm going to stick with you for the moment, Keith, and give Christy a little bit of a break while she does some thinking. So, Keith, somebody in one of these games is going to get hurt on one of these teams, and somebody's backup is going to have to come in and play well, right? Because you can't just be out there eating up space. You got to do something when you're out there. Give me a backup, a reserve player that you think could make a name for themselves in each one of these playoff matchups of Wild Card Weekend.
Oh,
This is the real deal, man. This is the playoffs. It's the real deal. Win or go home. Yeah, it's the playoffs.
Oh, that is a very good question.
You're welcome.
So who is the Ravens' number 3 receiver?
Well, because Zay Flowers is already out. So
Zay Flowers is already out.
Right. So Rashad
Bateman was looking a little bit shaky in the last couple of games. So wide receiver 3 for the Ravens. And it may not even matter because like you said, you have Lamar Jackson who on any given game can give you 90, 100 yards rushing. You have Derrick Henry, who we know can give you 200 yards rushing. But even when you have Batman and Robin, and if it boils down to just those 2 players, teams will put 8, 9, 11 in a box if that's all you're throwing at them. So if Rashad Bateman goes down, then you're gonna need. I'm gonna look this guy's name up so I don't look like an idiot.
Well, I think Tylan Wallace is probably who you're talking about.
Yes, Tylan Wallace. I think is your best option. I mean, they also have. No, it's Tylan Wallace.
You said they also have. Nope. No, they do not. They do not.
Just because Zay Flowers is already out.
Yep.
Bateman.
Deontay Johnson will get some more reps, but the other person who's going to see more balls is, of course, Isaiah Likely. They're going to go 12 personnel a lot.
Yes. Because Mark Andrews is going to get his. Isaiah Likely, who we thought was going to be like a huge breakout star, hasn't really been that. Especially with the reemergence of Mark Andrews. Yeah. But it is a passing league. I mean, we saw what happened with Penn State when they didn't have any completions to wide receivers. You need wide receivers to make catches. So assuming Bateman gets hurt, then you're going to need Talon Wallace to step up, because you can't just play everything in the middle of the field. You need somebody to be able to stretch the field, and you're not going to do that with just receiver or with tight ends and running the ball.
Yeah, well, the Steelers, once again, know who the Ravens are. Like, these teams are not at all mysterious to each other. They know what each team knows, what each team wants to do, and they know they love their tight ends. They both love tight ends. Both teams like to throw the ball tight ends more than most other teams do. The Ravens have two of the best tight. I mean, they have maybe the best tight end tandem in all of the NFL. In Likely, who is an emerging player, but Mark Andrews said, not quite yet, right? I'm not done yet. So, young Padawan, I'm still the Jedi here. He is a elite route runner amongst tight ends. He has fantastic hands. In terms of pure hands, he may have the best hands of any tight end. And yes, I'm aware Travis Kelce is still alive. Kelce is more creative in how he gets open.
Kelsey's has some drops, so you might be right still.
I think Mark Andrews might have the best hands of any tight end in the entire NFL. And if he'd been able to stay healthy his whole career, he would have some pretty insane numbers, because Lamar loves him. Lamar absolutely loves him. But he's had injury problems all going back to his sophomore year at Oklahoma. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy for the bulk of his career. But look at the seasons where he's been 100% healthy and look at the numbers he's put up. I agree with everything you said about Mark Andrews. And yes, either Deontay Johnson or Tyler Wallace will have to make these one or two key catches. They may not need to put up big numbers, but they'll be a 3rd and 8 where they've taken away everyone else. And either Justice Hill, who's a really good receiving back, he's their version of Jalen Warren down to Oklahoma State, right? These two teams are mirror images in so many ways. Oh, your third down backs from Oklahoma State? Ha! So is mine. There's so many things these teams like to do that are the same, that you'll need somebody that isn't accounted for to make at least a couple of plays. On defense, for the Steelers, watch out for one of their other pass rushers who's not named TJ Watt to make a big play, whether it be Keontae Benton on the interior or Nate Herbig as a situational pass rusher. They'll need to get smart pressure on Lamar. But smart, once again, stay in your lane, right? Don't get undisciplined when you're pass rushing Lamar Jackson, or you will get gashed. Those people who thought that Lamar had lost his ability to make big plays in the running game were reminded that Lamar has lost absolutely nothing. He gained a little weight last year, supposedly trying to take hits better, blah, blah, blah. He realized the best way to take hits is to avoid them, right? Is to not get hit. So he dropped the weight. He lost 17 or whatever pounds in the offseason, and now back to being a real dangerous runner again. The talent aspect obviously gives an advantage. Clearly, and I can admit this, to the Ravens. Let's go to the other game. So in the case of Chargers-Texans, I'll start with Christy Love again. Yay. Where do you think the pure talent advantage? You just go position by position on the depth chart. Which team is just more talented amongst the Texans and the Chargers?
I would say the Chargers. The Chargers have a top 5 defense. And they've been playing really well against the run. They're a good zone defense. So I'll probably say the Chargers for sure, based on this season. People could probably argue and say the Texans because of C.J. Stroud, but like I said earlier, C.J. Stroud been struggling all season. They're playing hurt and trying to figure everything out. So you still got Nico Collins, but I'll heavily say the Chargers for right now.
Okay. And with Tank Dell out, which receiver, which pass catcher, not named Nico Collins, so everyone's prepared for him, does emerge? Who makes a key catch that's not Nico Collins to help C.J. Stroud, who's been struggling, as we just pointed out? Who steps up and gives him a hand?
I have to get back to you on that. I'm sorry.
Don't worry, I will come back to you. We'll build more suspense. We love this. Then I will go down to Dan Goodwin. Same question for you. Which of these teams, when you break down these two teams in each of these wildcard matchups, where's the talent? Who has the tilt in terms of talent? And then give me a player that steps up due to injury or something, that deprives each of these teams of a key player, who steps up and makes a play in that person's stead?
Okay, I'm going to start with the Houston versus the Chargers game. I think the Chargers, to me, on paper, have a better team. They have all the weapons and things necessary to be a very good offensive team, but they also have a very good defense. As Christy made mention, they're one of the top defenses in the league. Jim Harbaugh is going to run the ball. We know that to be the case. So they're going to do, their due diligence in that regard. And of course, when you have Justin Herbert and you got some talented wide receivers and tight ends, then you'll be fine with the run game as well. So I think from top to bottom, when you look at the roster, in my opinion, I look at everything. It's not just offense. A lot of people just they focus solely on the offense, but I'm a defensive guy, always have been, so I always look and pay attention to the defense. I think that separates them from Houston, just my personal opinion. When you're looking at this team as well, though, somebody that could step up in case of an injury or something like that, I'm going to go ahead for Houston, and I'm going to say Mario Edwards Jr. Mario, he's kind of seasoned. You know what I mean? He's long in the tooth, so he's a veteran. He's been around for a little while. But I think if somebody falls on that defensive line, he's one of those types of players that could play both defensive end and defensive tackle. So you could sub him in either position and kind of get some productivity out of him. And this is a game where somebody like him can come in and kind of set the tone or do something defensively to throw a wrench in the game plan for the opposition. I'm also ride with Houston one more time when I talk about on the offensive side. I'm gonna say Dameon Pierce. We know Houston is gonna want to run the ball, right? And if Joe Mixon goes down, I think Dameon Pierce is a guy that can step in and kind of fill that void to a certain degree and maybe step in and do some things. So I'm gonna ride with that one on in that particular game. As far as the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to go, I'll address the elephant in the room. Is Russell Wilson, right? If he goes down with an injury, can Justin Fields come in and do something? I think everybody in the world, even in Pittsburgh, many people in Pittsburgh want to see that happen. Not that you want to see Russ get hurt. That's not what I'm saying. But they want to see Justin Fields because a lot of people feel like he's more dynamic, right? He's more dynamic. He's faster. He can do these things that Russ can't do on the football field. So a lot of people gravitate towards him. That being the case, it's a possibility that he can come in and make some things work, especially if Russ is kind of struggling a little bit, as we've made mention, and many people have seen over the course of the last 5-6 weeks. He's really been struggling. Offense doesn't seem to be cooking like they were before. So you never know. In a playoff game, you might go in a different direction at some point in time. So that might be a guy that can step in and really, really solidify things. As far as top to bottom talent on a roster, by far it's the Ravens. They're way more talented. I think they have way more pieces, better pieces, guys that are more consistent and dependable. You look at guys like George Pickens. He's not dependable for Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh has a problem right now with dependability. They don't have a lot of guys that they can just depend on. You look at it, take it like fantasy football, right? When people put together a fantasy roster, you want somebody that's dependable. I know that guy's going to go get me 15 points. If I know a guy's going to go get me 15 to 20 points every single week, I start him every week because there's no chance of him going out there and getting 2 or 4 or 5. So the more points that you have that are guaranteed, the better. And I think Baltimore has the guaranteed guys or guys that are dependable to go out there and consistently work each week. It's just a matter of if they do it in the playoffs. That's up to really Lamar Jackson really shine in the way he should. He really doesn't struggle against other teams. It's just Kansas City and Buffalo, in my opinion, in playoff football. So we'll see how that goes. But for this game, I think he'll be consistent. I think he'll be fine. And I think at the end of the day, Baltimore will probably win, to be real.
Yep. And Keith, stack these teams, right? The 4 teams that we see in this initial wild card weekend, in terms of just talent and roster from top to bottom. Who's number 1? Who's number 2? Who's number 3? And who's number 4?
Number 1, I think that's easily the Ravens. I don't think 2 is even close. I mean, you have the potential MVP in Lamar Jackson. You have some people who were arguing early in the season could be considered for MVP and Derrick Henry. And even without Zay Flowers, you still have Rashard Bateman, you still have Mark Andrews, you still have Isaiah Likely. Defensive side of the ball, Marlon Humphrey, Roquan Smith, Kyle Hamilton. That's just too much on that roster for a lot of teams to deal with. Number 2, I think 2, 3, and 4 are all really close. If you're saying pure talent, I think you would have to go with the Chargers. Because their defense is really good, because even in what some say is a down season for Justin Herbert, I think he's still highest ceiling of all the other quarterbacks. Number 3, I would go with the Texans, and then number 4, Steelers.
Okay. And now, you've all been waiting. So do take 2 things for us, Christy. One is give us a player who could step up, right? If for some reason he has to come in off the bench, somebody that is a reserve who suddenly is put into action, who you think might come through, and then do what same thing that we just saw Keith do, stack it. 1, 2, 3, and 4 in terms of the roster of each of these teams in the first weekend of wild card. Christy, are you muted? Because I bet that's pure gold we're getting there, but we're not.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, if you could just repeat. It looked amazing.
Yeah, I said to stack the roster, I would say Baltimore is number 1 for sure. Number 2 would have to be the Chargers. Number 3, I would have to say Houston, and number 4, Pittsburgh, only because Pittsburgh lost their last 4 games. And they just haven't gotten together. And then the players that I am going to name that can potentially step up if somebody gets hurt. I do want to say John, I think I say his last name, Michi the Third. Yes.
Yeah, John Michi the Third. Yeah.
Yep. I feel like he can come up big, and then I want to say Dante Johnson as well. Those 2 players, if they had to come in that position, in that circumstance, they can step up and make big plays.
Excellent. Thank you. So I want to shout out also the Dameon Pierce call out. For those who've watched, when Dameon Pierce has actually gotten the balls in his hands, because he clearly is angry. He's angry that he's not the starter, first of all. He thought that he should have been the man in Houston. And he had a really good rookie season. He was over 1,000 yards as a rookie. Whether it be in the return game or they throw a screen to him where he gets the ball as a ball carrier, as a conventional running back, he runs like a man trying to get paid somewhere, right? If you don't want me here, somebody else come get me. Now, Xavier Hudson he's their one sort of big-bodied guy, not named Nico Collins. The rest of their receivers are smaller guys. Teddy Dell, of course, was 149 pounds when he arrived at Houston. Shout out to my friend who recruited him to the University of Houston, right? You know who you are out there. But the fact is that if Dameon Pierce gets his hands on the ball in the return game or a screen, or even, like I said, just a plain old, inside zone, outside zone, he is going to run like a man trying to get paid by somebody somewhere. He is a serious piece of business. I would love to have him, frankly, if we move on from Najee, I would love to have him in Pittsburgh. I think that Dameon Pierce is a starting NFL running back who is right now stuck behind, a higher priced free agent. And Joe Mixon's a great player. I mean, I'm taking anything away from him, but as a pure between the tackles downhill runner, Pierce may be slightly better, but Mixon's better in the other things. Mixon's better as a receiver, things like that. But as just a guy coming downhill trying to run through your face, watch out for Dameon Pierce if he gets a chance to get the ball in his hands. I love the fact that his name is called. So we now reach the prediction moments. I will start with ladies first. So, Christy Love, give me your prediction. Who wins each of these first two wildcard matches?
Everybody has the Ravens winning, but I'm going to go with the underdog, and I'm going to go with Pittsburgh. If Pittsburgh can somehow maintain Derrick Henry under 90 rushing yards, because anytime Derrick Henry gets over 90, Baltimore is undefeated. So if they can maintain him, I feel like they can potentially win the game, and also limit turnovers. No turnovers.
Okay. Yes, turnovers are everything. Yeah.
And then for the Chargers and Houston, I got the Chargers. They're just good on defense. Defense win games.
Right. The number one red zone defense, number 6 overall. Yeah, that's a serious defense. And now you, Keith, give me your predictions. And if you have scores, you can throw scores out there, but tell me who wins and why. Now he's muted.
I caught it. I got it. We're good. So I'm going to go with the easy one first, and I'm going to go with the Chargers. No disrespect to the Texans and C.J. Stroud, but the Chargers defense is too good, and C.J. Stroud has been too inconsistent that I can see the Texans coming out in this one. Steelers Ravens. I think it's a tougher game than people want to give it credit for, because you have the holy division rivals playing for the third time against each other in the season. I think I'm still going to say Ravens, but I think it's going to be razor thin margins on the Ravens getting the win. Only because, like I said earlier, and at the end of the day, when you get past X's and O's, when there's nothing else remaining, it comes down to playmakers. And Lamar Jackson is the best playmaker on the field, and I think he will make that one play that's going to make a difference in the game.
Okay. And now, same question for you, Dan. Who wins each of these games and why?
Well, you got to start. I'm going to start with the one in the AFC, actually. Well, both of them in the AFC. I'm tripping. But I'm going to go with the Pittsburgh versus Baltimore. It's got to be Baltimore, man. You know, you look at Pittsburgh and they're reeling right now. I just don't see them being able to correct everything that's been going wrong over the course of the last 5-6 weeks or so. So they're not going to be able to correct that in time to kind of push themselves or get themselves squared away against a team like Baltimore, team like that's been towards the top, and they just win in so many different aspects of the game, passing, running. I mean, Lamar 41 touchdowns this year. It's been outrageous. So I really don't see them slowing down in this game. I think they put up a pretty decent score. I think Pittsburgh puts up a fight as best they can, but they're just outmanned. They're outgunned. They're bringing pea shooters to a war, and it's not going to happen. It's not going to work. So I don't even want to give the score in that game. I think it might be a blowout, 20-plus points or so. Even though it's a rivalry game, I understand all that, but I just think Baltimore is going to want to make a statement in this game, and I think they will. In the other game, Houston versus I'm like you, Bill. Los Angeles. Let me say Los Angeles, not San Diego, Los Angeles. In that game, I'm going to go with the Chargers in that game. I think they run the ball, they play defense, and in the playoffs, that works. Houston does a decent job of that as well. They run the ball with Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce, but I just feel like Jim Harbaugh is going to do what he does, and he's going to stick to his game plan. A lot of coaches, they always falter and they change things up and they end up doing something that they shouldn't be doing. Stick with the simple things, stupid. That's what you have to do sometimes. And I think that's what they will do. I think they'll win this game. I think they probably win it maybe 27-21. Let's go that.
Okay. So before we close out, I'm going to touch very briefly on tomorrow's games. We're not going to do a full breakdown because you don't need to. That's tomorrow. That's a future us problem. But there are obviously 3 games tomorrow. 1 AFC and 2 NFC, and they're fascinating, right? Once again, you're seeing a real contrast, and that's why I love when you get to see teams that, as much as we love the sort of rock fight between brothers that the Ravens and Steelers are, if you have a cousin that you grew up with who was born around the same time as you, or if you have a Irish twin, like a sibling that's within a year of you, or a real twin, and you fight them, that's what it's like. You fight a lot. You learn what they do well. You know, if you get them a headlock, they give up, or if they don't like getting punched in the nose, whatever. You learn about them. You play each other a lot, and you have similar philosophies of football. While you could be right, that could be a blowout. I just have a feeling it won't. I have a feeling it'll turn into a rock fight, a death by 1,000 cuts, punching each other in the liver. Like I said, for those boxing historians, think Carmen Basilia versus Dean Fulmer in 1947. That kind of thing. Okay, so tomorrow, obviously, we open up with Denver versus Buffalo, and that's sort of deep in the recesses of my brain. That feels like the one possible surprise upset game. Everyone loves Buffalo, and some people think Buffalo is a Super Bowl team, and they could well be right. They're a very talented team. Something about this Broncos team scares me. And then you've got Green Bay and Philadelphia. Philadelphia should win that game if they just hold serve, don't make big mistakes. But something about that Green Bay team scares me. And then Washington, Tampa Bay. That's the most evenly matched in my mind of those 3 games, right? That whoever wins, it wouldn't be an upset in my mind. Tampa, Reagan, Baker Mayfield, right? Tampa, Baker Mayfield has had not quite MVP, but like close. Right, a second tier. Right, I mean, he's had a career year. He's run the ball well. He's passed the ball exceptionally well. He's inspired his teammates. The team has rallied around him. His toughness, his character, his grit has rubbed off on the whole team. And they're not the most talented team, right? They have a couple of great players. I mean, Mike Evans is a future Hall of Famer, and I feel like Levante David's a future Hall of Famer. But the rest of that team is, guys, good players, right? They have a good 1-2 punch at running back. They have serviceable tight ends. In fact, let me say that. Better than serviceable. Kate Otten, I think, is going to be a solid pro for many years. Their offensive line has one, perennial all-pro. A guy's going to have a Trent Williams-type career, probably in Tristan Wirfs. But the rest of the line is guys, good players, but nothing great. Their defense no longer has anybody that terrifies you, right? Antoine Winfield Jr. is a talented guy, but had a down year this year. They lost one of their best corners to free agency. They're just getting it done somehow on defense. And then Washington is also kind of a bend a lot defense. Like, they give up a lot of big plays and a lot of yards, but then they stiffen up a little right before you. Like, they make you kick field goals a fair amount, but they let you move the ball on defense. And then on offense, they are a big play machine, right? They have – people like to compare, obviously Jaden to Lamar. He reminds me more of, to go once again of old, he reminds me more of Randall Cunningham, right? That sort of flexy body, plastic man with a strong arm and, a elusive runner with a little bit of speed, more than a little bit of speed, but really elusive. Like, he doesn't take many hits. In fact, he runs a fair amount. And then they've got a great complement of receivers. And then they've got, a haul of very good tight end in Zach Ertz. And their offensive line's a bit of a project, but but they've gotten it done. And of course, Jaden Daniels has helped. But just walk me through really quickly before we close out. Does anybody have a strong feeling about any of those games? You want to throw out a proclamation, get all gutsy and brave and say something about one of those games that will either make you look like a genius or an idiot, depending on how it turns out. Anybody?
Yeah, I'll be a bold one and call an upset of Green Bay over the Eagles.
There we go. What's a bold pick?
I know the Eagles are the better team. I know they have the better overall players, but there's always one game throughout the whole wildcard weekend where there is a big upset. And I think
Every year.
I know a lot of people want to pick the Broncos. I'm sorry, Denver is not happening. It's just not.
I agree.
I mean, I had the pleasure of writing about that. I gave my reasons to why the Denver might win. It's not happening. I think if there is going to be the one big upset, it's going to be with the Eagles. Just because, I mean, heavy is the head that wears the crown. The Eagles have been seen as the best NFC team for a couple seasons now. And Jordan Love has a lot to prove. And I think he's going to prove a lot. And I think they're going to upset the Eagles.
Okay. Well, first of all, as a person who spent a few years in a Shakespeare company, shout out to Shakespeare by the Sea in my hometown. I love when people drop Shakespearean quotes in their football analysis. Well done, my friend. There is another chance for someone else to boldly go, right? Because
I'll hop in there. Let me take. I don't know how bold this prediction might be. I mean, because Tampa Bay is favored, I believe, by 3 points or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna go Washington in that game. I think Washington walks away with that game fairly easily. I don't think Tampa Bay is as good as people claim them to be or proclaim them to be. Let's not forget they did go 1-5 over a stretch during the regular season. That left a bad taste in my mouth after getting off to a decent start. You also have to think about the Commanders having the number 3 rushing game in the league coming into this game. Rushing offense, they're number 3. I think Jaden Daniels will get some runs, of course. That adds to it. And anytime you're able to run the ball, I love going with those teams that can run the ball in playoff, football. The games usually get a little bit tighter, and you have to lean kind of heavily on that type of situation. So I'm gonna go with the Commanders over the Buccaneers tomorrow. I don't know how bold that is because it's only a 3-point game or whatever, but I say Washington walks away with it, and I think they do it fairly easily. I don't think it's going to be as close as people think.
So we have people calling for blowouts. In fact, you've called for 2 blowouts. And
I got 2 of them.
The oldest that you've done, right? Called for 2 blowouts. Yeah. I do like Washington for a couple of reasons. Jaden Daniels, obviously still a rookie, but I think we're about to see his ascension, right? I think he's going to be one of those guys that moves into that top 6 to 8 quarterback discussion as of next year, right? I think he's firmly in that discussion as of next year. I think
let's not CJ Stroud him now because we said that last year. We'll see what happens with CJ Stroud.
Well, right, but I think there's a difference. There's 2 differences, right? One is I think the pressure is different because CJ Stroud's in an offense that asks him to purely win the game throwing the football, right? As you pointed out, though he's a good athlete, he tested well as an athlete, he doesn't prefer to get outside the pocket and make things happen. Jaden Daniels is a true dual threat and has been since he was in his early teens, right? I've watched Jaden for a long, long time, from high school forward. And, I watched this 176-pound kid, because that's what he weighed when he arrived at Arizona State. He arrived on campus at 176 pounds, 6'3" 3/4", 176. And to watch him develop and grow every year and improve every year and refine himself every year, I feel like I love Coach Bernard Stroud IV too. Don't get me wrong, right? That is a young man who I think will find his groove again and be great again. But he has a different kind of pressure on him. Their offense is so predicated on him seeing things down the field and getting the ball out of his hands in the passing game only. While through zone read and other things, they simplify everything for Jaden to some extent. He's a bright guy too, don't get me wrong. He's another guy that sees it quickly, but he can put pressure on a defense in so many different types of ways. You can't play certain defenses against him, right? If you play 2-man against him, you're going to die, right? You just can't do it. Playing 2-man against Jaden Daniels means giving up 20 yards of carry to Jaden Daniels. So he takes certain defenses out of your playbook as a defensive play caller. You just can't do 2-man.
Can I say one thing about that too, Bill, if you don't mind?
Fire away.
The difference between CJ Stroud and somebody like Jaden Daniels, to me, from a defensive standpoint, is when you're playing somebody like Jaden Daniels, you have to have a QB spy almost, right? You have to spy him, and you have to one guy's job has to be, hey, make sure you don't lose track of where that quarterback is, because he can get out of the pocket and do so many things, right? Now, when you play C.J. Stroud, you don't have to play that way because he doesn't want to run as much as Jaden Daniels does. He's like you said, true dual threat means you have to adjust your defensive settings. You have to adjust what you do defensively to account for what he's going to do, what he's possible, what he wants to do in many cases. Guys like him, Lamar, Justin Fields, all these running, Jalen Hurts, all these guys that can get out the pocket, Josh Allen, these guys that get out of the pocket, you have to almost dedicate a spy to them to say, hey, I'm not going to let you beat me. You don't have to do that with C.J. Stroud because he's more of a pocket passer. Now, does that change over time? We never know, but for the most part, Jaden, that's the difference in those two guys, just from a defensive mindset, you might say.
And I'll go a step further. Some teams have even begun double spying Jaden and Lamar, right? Where they'll split the field in half. If he runs to this side, you've got it. If he comes to this side, you've got it. So now this player can only be involved in underneath coverage. This player cannot be involved in deep coverage. You can't do both. Yep. So the coverages are limited, right? You can't do as many things defensively. So unless C.J. Stroud becomes Coleridge Bernard Stroud the fourth, will have to have a long talk with himself about being a more willing runner if he would like to simplify some of the defenses he sees. And of course, his offensive game planner will have to be okay with it as well, because otherwise he's going to be defended the same way you defend a guy like Aaron Rodgers, right? Or a guy like, a traditional pocket passer. He is schematically, you feel like if this guy runs, he might get 6 to 8 yards. He's not going to go the distance on him. I don't worry about him. Jaden Daniels, Lamar, I've watched Justin Fields run for 70 yards. Like it was nothing. Like he was just getting started. When a guy can conceivably score from anywhere on the field without throwing the football, that takes certain defensive calls out of my defensive menu. That's gone. Two-man, gone, right? Certain things are just gone. I just tear them out. I can't even call them. I can call all of my possible defenses against a guy like C.J. Unless Coleridge Bernard Stroud the fourth says to himself, if I don't like it, I'm going to take off. And if I feel like pressure's coming from this side, I'm going to step up. If I still don't see anything, I'm going to take off. If he does a little bit more of that and not taking as many sacks, two things will happen. One is, of course, his offensive line it'll take some of the pressure off them, and it maybe will force teams to think about him differently. But until that happens, you're going to sit back and play coverage.
That's it. Spot on. Absolutely.
In our last couple of minutes, we're going to close out in a couple of minutes. Does anybody else have it doesn't have to be bold even, something else that you feel about any of these? It could be even sort of macro level, like the whole playoffs as a whole. Is there some storyline, some emergence, something that happens? It could be a coach, could be a player, could be something even that happens schematically. If you want to get into the X's and O's, though, I don't want to go too deep because I know not everybody's into that. But something you think emerges as a storyline from this particular playoff season, because we've seen storylines about coaches, right? This guy can't win the big game, or storylines about players. This player chokes, or this player can't beat a defense, or this player can't do this, can't do that. And then it takes a playoff run to change that. Does somebody get to either change or reinforce the narrative about them once again, anywhere in this playoff run? I'll start once again with you, Christy Love. Who do you think either changes or reinforces what the narrative, as people like to say, which I don't like to say, I should stop saying it, but the story about, or the way someone's perceived has changed in this playoff season?
I can go with two players. I'm going to go with C.J. Stroud because, as we all know, he had a great rookie season. This year, he's struggling. If he loses against the Chargers and he has a bad game, are people going to start questioning and be like, is he really that guy? I feel like that will start showing on social media. And then my second player is going to be Jordan Love. If he loses against Philly, which I have him losing, what's next? Will they still think he's the guy in Green Bay? Also, can he get the job done? It's going to be a lot of that going on, I feel like, if they lose. So Those are my 2 picks. And then I also want to say real quick, I'm sorry. Buffalo is going to beat the Broncos. I feel like Josh Allen, in my opinion, he can still get MVP. He makes everybody around him look good. James Cook is doing amazing. If they win today, I feel like they can go all the way. That's my opinion.
I'm gonna clue y'all in. That's her favorite quarterback in the league. That's why she's saying it.
It's not okay. I like Josh Allen. Okay, I always have. But this is his year. This is his year. You cannot deny that at all. So if they win, we'll see. Watch, just watch.
Yeah, I feel like the secret for him is to not put on the Superman cape, right? If he doesn't decide to try to truck a linebacker, if he doesn't, I think his thing is managing moments, right? In terms of pure talent, he's one of the most talented quarterbacks ever. He's a top 4 talented, in terms of pure talent, one of the top 4 talented quarterbacks ever. He's in the same breath with John Elway and guys like that. His level of talent is ludicrous. But he's also a guy that doesn't always trust his teammates, right? Sometimes he decides to try to do too much. If he avoids that, I think you could be right. If he's matured in that way, where he feels like I don't have to win this game right here, right now, I think you could be right.
It's a great season to say that, Bill, because this is the season they took everything away from him, talent-wise. Right. You know what I mean? Right. Like dependable players.
Right. But that's when you get to show. That's how you turn players who aren't dependable into dependable players, by depending on them, right? Like you can't have depth unless you play depth, right? You can't have that's what people say. Oh, why don't we have depth? Well, you don't play depth. Like that's how you get depth. You don't wish for depth and it happens. You get depth by playing more players. I mean, I know it sounds simple, but that's actually how it happens. I mean, that's actually how it happens. So when you say, "Oh, we don't trust our backups," well, you don't play them, so you can't trust them. You're going to find out if Keon Coleman's been battling a wrist, so you're going to find out if one of those guys can become dependable. You're going to find out if, they lost Dalton Kincaid.
Shakir is good. I like him.
Yeah, he's good. Yep.
Oh, that's one of my favorites.
I wouldn't trust Keon.
I think he emerges. Yeah. I think he actually does emerge amongst the players that you want to pick as emerging. Same question for you, Dan. Does someone change the storyline? Does somebody or confirm the storyline that's been put out about it?
Well, I think Lamar Jackson, this is a time and opportunity for him to really change the storyline that's been around him. And that is MVPs, blah, 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 this, that, and the third. And I mean, almost Peyton Manning-esque, right? Tons of, season MVPs, but seems lackluster in the playoffs, you might say, right? And Peyton Manning was able to change that narrative as well. So I think this is Lamar Jackson's opportunity to do that. You have a team that is weakened in Kansas City. I still don't believe that they're as good as people think they are. You got a matchup against a rival. You can go out there, kind of make a statement. That's what I expect them to do today. And then go on to the second round or divisional playoff round and see who you play and kind of see how that works out. But I think he can change his narrative, that narrative that, hey, this is just, he plays good in the regular season and then he goes against, the likes of Buffalo and Kansas City and it's always, hit or miss with him. I think he can really change that, especially having the running back that he has right now. And of course, you got some much better receivers and talent around you. I think it was an unfair narrative to a certain degree because he only had one guy for so long. You were bringing in retreaded wide receivers that were old and washed up and asking him to produce with these guys. Now you have some receivers, some studs on the outside, as well as your tight ends that you can utilize and a run game. I think it's time for him to go in and make that change. So that narrative can change. And also, I think Kansas City, that narrative that they have can change too. The narrative that, hey, they're just going to win. They're just going to win. This is their time. This is when they take off. I think that narrative changes as well. Even though they're not playing this week, I understand that. I think in the playoffs, when it comes and their game comes, I think they're going to lose next week, whoever they play.
Okay. Well, the story supposedly, right, is that as long as you still have your Hall of Fame coach and your Hall of Fame quarterback, you're going to be fine somehow, magic, no matter what. And of course, the thing that, if you've actually been watching Kansas City, what's been doing it for them is that big play defense, right? That's really what's been carrying them. They have one of the most, in key plays, right? Their defense, when it's a must-have-it play, they make it. They make those must-have-it plays. The only time they didn't was, of course, against the Buffalo Bills. And other than that, when they had to have it, whether it be George Karlaftis or another, possible future Hall of Famer, Chris Jones, or somebody, they have a terrific young, active linebacking core that's full of guys that know how to. I mean, to me, one of their sort of unsung heroes is Drew Tranquil, who they got in free agency, and they have a great front office. People don't talk about Brett Veach enough. And I love Howard Roseman. He's fantastic. He's a masterclass, but a quieter but equally effective GM is Brett Veach, who year in and year out, once again, depth, right? When somebody goes down,
that's it.
Whoever comes in for Kansas City, whether you've heard of them or not, turns out to be pretty darn good, right? No matter what happens, when somebody goes down, oh, who's this guy? Oh, turns out he's good too. So that's what I think. To me, that's one of the things that's going to matter in this is, can they still scheme up, game plan up, magic up enough plays that no one's ever seen before? Because that's what usually happens, right? You give them extra time to scheme up. The most creative game designer, play designer in all the NFL is still Andrew Neil Reed. And you give them that extra time, right? That extra time to scheme, and all of a sudden you're looking at plays you've never seen before. And of course the magic of the heart. But will that be enough? I agree. They are not the best team in the NFL, despite their record. They've the term I use is run through the raindrops, right? They've managed to run through the raindrops. They've matrixed their way to a one-loss season magically almost. But will it kind of run out for them? I'll finish up with you. So coming down to you, Keith, who either confirms, they are who we said they were, right? Or who changes the story about who we thought they were?
I'm gonna go status quo. I unfortunately have to watch a lot of the Chiefs living in the AFC West market, and I know what the national narrative is about. They're just not that good. I disagree. I don't think they care how they're winning games. They're winning games. Number one, their defense has been really good all season. Number two, one of the things that hasn't been talked about a lot, in particular with the Chiefs offense, is they've been dealing with a lot of injuries all season, and including a lot of players. They lost Rashee Rice to start the season. They had to integrate DeAndre Hopkins. Now they're integrating Hollywood Brown. They have Xavier Werber going now. Quietly, the Chiefs offense has been getting better as the season progressed. And what the Chiefs do better than any team in the NFL has done in the last 5-6 years is they play their best football in the playoffs. So maybe they haven't been playing their best football in the regular season, but I think they're going to do it in the playoffs. I think maybe it's a bold take. I don't think it's that bold of a take. I think they're going to be the first team to three-peat and win 3 Super Bowls in a row. And in that process, they're also going to reaffirm that the Bills could not beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. I mean, how many times do we have to see Josh Allen and the Bills beat the Chiefs in the regular season just to lose in the playoffs? I mean, they changed the whole playoff overtime rule because the Chiefs kept beating the Bills in the playoffs. I think Josh Allen has had a MVP-worthy season, but there's been one quarterback who has consistently beat Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs in the playoffs the last few years, and he's not in the playoffs, and that's Joe Burrow. So I just think that things are what they are. I know people aren't high on the Chiefs. I have to watch them too many times. They broke my heart too many times for me to go against them.
Yeah, you almost think maybe the Chiefs are at that point where it's like people are rooting against them, right? Like myself.
I am too.
Yeah. I mean, I naturally root against them.
To be honest.
Because, I mean, they're the Broncos' rivals, but the best comparison you have for them is the New England Patriots. That's the level that they're at right now. And somehow, some way, whether you want to say it's the refs or whatever, the Patriots found the way, and that's the level that the Chiefs are right now.
Yes. Well, the Chiefs were like lovable at first, right? Everybody rallied around them, and now you've got like their players are dating, the biggest pop stars in the world. They're all getting commercials. People are tired of them. I get it. People ready to turn the page. And yeah, shout out to Joe Lee Burrow, right? And watch out for them to be back, right? That you get a 1-year break from them, but they'll be back. I promise you. Watch out for them next year. I feel like the people who mentioned Green Bay, that feels like another one of those dangerous. I could see Green Bay, if they make it past this initial matchup, if they survive the Eagles, I could see them making it all the way to the Super Bowl. They scare me.
I can't agree.
Now, they need to stay healthy, right? There's another team that's had.
The two Bears fans say no. I'm surprised by that.
They've had.
I don't give them any respect.
Obviously, Christian
matter of fact, we just beat them last week.
Yeah,
I'm aware of that. Christian Watson is obviously a big blow, losing him. But I feel like it's a big if, right? Because the Eagles are the better team. But if they somehow survive the Eagles, I feel like they have a fantastic coaching staff. I really like their coaching staff. And that's where if they survive, that's why they'll survive. Their coaching staff will come up with some things that will help them survive. And I think they can make a run. And yeah, the Chiefs are super dangerous. I think people have gotten bored or whatever with it. Their greatness has begun to people sort of glaze over when they watch it because they're not exciting how they do it anymore. They don't have Tyreek Hill. They don't have, they don't have players that excite you anymore. They sort of bore you into winning every game 27-24, it seems. Or 27 to, somewhere around there, right? 27-23. It's always close. They always make a big play towards the end, and they win again. But teams that know how to win, right? We don't like it, but teams that have figured out how to win games.
But they got lucky wins, Bill. Lucky wins.
If you have 15 of them, then maybe you figured something out, Dan. If you get 15, 16 of those, if you can get lucky 16 times out of 17, maybe you figured something. They won games resting their starters, Dan. They won games resting their starters. How much luck do you have when Carson Wentz is out there beating your behind? I mean, I'm sorry, man. That's a lot of luck.
It's true. They're winning on blocked field goals and stuff, but it's cool.
Yeah. I know.
They're a solid team, bro. From top to bottom, they're solid, and that's the difference between having a well-coached team and just being a good team, right? A lot of players can be on the team, but if you're not well-coached, you're not going to win those games. That's the Bears' problem. We lost. One-score games and debacles that we have at the end of the game, and it's all due to coaching, bad coaching.
Yep. You lost games where guys were literally had their back to the play, in the most important play of the game. Yes, that tells you that coaching is an issue, right? That tells you coaching is an issue. When you literally have guys who are like, "Hey, what's everybody yelling?"
We're never going to let that down. Y'all going.
And all the coaches, the whole coaching staff, nobody knew he was doing that either. Nobody knew he wasn't paying attention, right? Everybody just sitting there watching him do it. So.
Yeah, like I said.
One last thing, Bill. I think Christy had her parlay.
Oh, yeah. I want to do a quick parlay for today's game real quick.
Here we go.
Okay. You can play these on all the sports books, FanDuel, DraftKings, BetUS, whatever. I have Justin Herbert for 200 passing yards. I have Lamar Jackson for 175 passing yards. He can well get over 200, but that's the safe play. I got Nico Collins for 50. I want to go ahead and do Joe Mixon for 50 rushing yards. J.K. Dobbs for 40 rushing yards. And then for the Baltimore game, Rashad Bateman, 25 rushing. He'll get that. That's a lock. Derrick Henry, you can do 60 for the safe bet, or you can do more than 60, to risk it to get more money. Lamar Jackson for 40 rushing yards, and then Najee Harris for 25 rushing. That's it.
Okay. All right.
All wins right there. That's all.
Yeah, wins. Yes. This should hit easily.
Yep.
I'm gonna play that because I ain't been hitting shit.
And on that happy and slightly profane note, I would like to thank all of you for your attention, your talent, and your time. I'm going to start once again with the lady, the beautiful lady right here, Christy Love. Tell people what you're working on, where they can find and follow your work, and anything else you need to tell.
Absolutely. You can follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at I am Christy Love. You can follow me on TikTok, as long as TikTok's still here, at Christy Love Sports. I also have a podcast called Foul on the Play that I drop every Wednesday. I talk about the Chicago Bears, and we're doing the Chicago Bulls, Chicago Sky, everything in Chicago. Now the Bears season is now over. So make sure you guys tune in. And also Dan on this show is my co-host as well. That's it.
Excellent. Well, next segue into Dan. Dan, tell people where they can find your work, where they can follow you, and what things you might be cooking on.
Well, of course, you got Three Kings in the Midway podcast. That's one of the podcasts that I do. Of course, Foul on the Play with Team NBS Media and Christy Love there. We talk about the Bears. We talk about all Chicago things, all sports. And we're going to be touching on plenty of other things like WNBA and all that type of stuff as well. Of course, you can find us on Spaces as well. We do that. I do that for the Chicago Bears. But we're also doing one with Team NBS Media that will be taking off the last Thursday of this month. We'll be doing it each week. So look forward to that. Check with us. You guys can definitely get in there, chime in, talk about what you want to talk about. We'll talk about a couple of sports topics, talk about some life and entertainment things as well. So other than that, man, appreciate you guys at Danikin_DG3 on both X and TikTok.
And last but certainly never least, Keith Richards. Please tell us what you're working on and where we can find your work.
You can find me at 5280 Keith. I do all things Colorado sports. My normal disclaimer, I refuse to cover the Rockies, so don't come looking for that. But Broncos, Nuggets, one of my big things right now is the Colorado Rapids, who are just starting to get their season kicked off. And then starting to get into some more WWE coverage in the Netflix era, so be on the lookout for that.
Excellent. And if you are stealing some parlays, watch out for the rushing overs on a bunch of the quarterbacks. I think playoff football emboldens even quarterbacks who don't like to run to run. So if you watch out for even some of the non-mobile quarterbacks to go out there and run more than you expect. I think Herbert goes over his rushing prop. I think Coleridge Bernard Stroud IV goes over his rushing prop. So if you just look at those and then look for receiving props to some of the wide receivers, including the number 2 receivers. They're like Jalen Ward and Kamani Vidal might catch the ball more than expected as well. So
bet on receptions is what you're saying. And
look for some of those running back
receptions for the quarterback.
Yep, look for some of those to go over as well. Once again, we are pleased to represent Team NBS Media. We are going to bring you heat all the way through until finally they hoist Mount Lombardi, and I'll be off to the Senior Bowl after that to bring you the next NFL stars today. Well, not today, but then. Once again, on behalf of Team NBS Media, our big boss, Joe Cardoza, and all the people I'm joined by here, once again, Christy Love, Dan Goodwin, and Keith Richards. I'm Bill Carroll, and we are OUT out. See you again soon.